Welcome to the Telegraph Studios. I'm Louise People, and today we're discussing investing in special situations and managing a successful turnaround. So Nick, we hear so much about the economy and its success stories, but what about the challenges that we're faced with?
I think we're still faced by quite a lot of challenges. I think the legacy of 2008, 2009 is still evident in the wider economy. Its growth hasn't been as strong as everybody hoped it would be, and it's been patchy. So we still see a lot of businesses which are constrained by ownership, or perhaps there's too much debt on their balance sheet, and so they're not free to invest in the things that they would like to be able to do to establish proper competitive proposition or growth in their business.
Now, do these companies come to you or do you target them?
They always come to us, and the filter for that is quite natural. A lot of these businesses are not in imminent risk of financial failure. So they tend to get financial advice, which leads to a process, either a sale process or a seeking of investment, and it's through that filter that we normally engage. Probably 90% of the businesses that we see in a year come from less than 10 advisors, so it's a well mapped market, and people are aware of what we do, and we're aware of generally what's available through the market at any one point in time.
Say I'm one of these businesses. What are the symptoms that drive the need for assistance?
Normally, the companies that we see have probably been on the back foot for some time, so management have been under pressure. Decision making will have become quite short term of necessity, and so no real long-term planning or investment in people, projects, or perhaps acquisitions maybe as well. So the first constraint is one of around the senior management team and their ability to make strategic decisions for the longer run. But I think also there's generally a lack of optimism in these businesses. They've been under pressure for some time, and part of our job is to reinvigorate the businesses to look at themselves afresh and get on the front foot and start over.
Do you think those businesses will look at that as a criticism?
That's a good question. I think almost always there's a starting point of apprehension in the management. I think a lot of them are not so confident to be able to articulate what the fix is. They can tell you very well what's gone wrong historically, but it needs to be drawn out of them, or to be coaxed out of them, really, as to their confidence in the future and what needs to change. And part of our job of engaging with management is to find that bridge between the two of us.
Now, whilst finding that and working with various businesses, have you seen the trends?
I think the trend has been predominantly the one of, it's been less about imminent financial failure, it's been around a lack of real sustainable growth in the economy at such a level that it would naturally pull these businesses through. So most of them have to find their own solution to sustainable growth, and that's normally building projects or employing people, or actually finding long-term solutions which make them competitive. And I think that in the economy we have today, that often needs the outside agency of people like us to provide investment and resource. So if you take something like Pizza Hut restaurants, for example, for 10 years that business had been in sales decline. Competition in the meantime had grown on the high street, lots of new brands have emerged. But what we've been able to do is to invest £60 million into that business to undertake a fundamental re-imaging of the estate. And I've no doubt Pizza Hut restaurants will now be a very successful business.
So how do Rutland Partners cut through the complexity of situations?
I think we try to stay very open-minded around what the right solution is, and I think part of that drawing out of management is to almost start with a blank sheet of paper and a blank checkbook and say to management, well, if you're going to make this business properly competitive again, what would you do? And their answer normally conditions how we go forward from there.
I'd have to say, if I was a management team, I would be quite nervous to lay it all out on the table.
Well, they'll lay out a lot of the history, but they don't always have the capacity to lay out all of the future. And so I suppose where the coming together is in the perfect set of investment circumstances is that we can bring fresh ideas and money and momentum and energy, and where management are coming from is knowledge of a sector, some experience of how they've arrived at where they are. and perhaps some vision. Not, most managers have half of the idea formed, but they don't think there'll be anybody out there that will support that. And so I think our real strength is to be able to cut through that, find that solution, and then support it with full commitment.
Sounds like it's quite flexible.
Yeah, I think we ultimately, I think most of the situations we invest in, the end plan, indeed I might say, the plan 1 year in or 2 years in is sometimes quite different from where you start from. But it has to be like that if it's going to carry on and be sustainable.
So say I turn to Rutland Partners, we want to work together. What's the criteria?
I think the criteria for us is that we need to know that it's a scale business, so something with a significant revenue base or a high profile within its sector. Many of our investments are 1, 2 or 3 in a sector, but will currently be in disadvantaged circumstances. I think we might sometimes invest in a brand or in a particular asset base of a business. If you take something like Millbrook, an automotive proving ground, its previous owners had invested probably over 100 million in the development of that site. So although we could buy it at a relatively low price, it clearly was very well invested historically. So we like something that has that kind of scale to it, because in the longer run, once we've sorted these businesses out, you want them to be able to have that resale potential to somebody else further down the track. And that's normally about scale or proposition.
And what about your skill sets? What would you bring to the table?
I think we bring a clarity of thought and a fresh approach. I mean, it's not unusual at all for us to go into quite a difficult set of circumstances and say to management, so blank piece of paper, open checkbook, what would you really need to do to make this business competitive? And I think that kind of fresh approach to people who've been on the back foot for a very long time is actually it's initially quite challenging, but it's also quite refreshing because they begin to think about opportunity rather than challenges and problems.
Now let's look at management. What attributes do you look for in a management team?
I think management need to be honest. It's very difficult when you're a manager. You've been on the back foot for a period of time. You may have been locked up with unsympathetic owners for a period of time. So I think first of all they need to come to the table understanding, if they can, that there is the opportunity for a fresh start. So they need to be honest, they need to be realistic about what's achievable and over what time frame. If they have a half-formed plan, that's great, but what we really want them to be is ambitious but open-minded, because nearly always the plan that fits the problems that they face is not immediately obvious to all of us on day one, so you need to have a degree of engagement around what that plan can look like, and crucially then to how you resource that plan. Because it may be that they have colleagues or they have employees who will have to embrace a process of change in the business, and it's very difficult to move any business forward if you don't have management willing to embrace change.
It must be quite challenging sometimes to speak to those people. How do you overcome managers who just won't listen?
It's a very good question. I think in many cases management are either in denial at the start, or they're perhaps slightly apprehensive about the answer you're going to give, perhaps job security. Many of these people will have families and children in school. So I think a lot of it is about trying to come to persuade them that actually it is an open book. You know, we're very honest. We've built up a very trustworthy reputation in the market. And what we want them to be is honest about the challenges they face, and then we can begin to address those challenges together. We can't run the business. We can't do their job for them, but we can provide the resources to them to enable them to.
So what tips can you provide them in managing a successful investment?
I think they need to come to the table with an open mind. I think they need to be honest and realistic. But I think they have to understand that in our set of circumstances, the best deals are the ones that we work up together. They don't come pre-formed in any particular package solution. So because we're not a sector generalist, sector specialist, we're not coming to that table predetermined about what the solution has to look like. So the best managers come to those conversations, I think, understanding of their circumstances, but open-minded about how to build a better business out of that set of circumstances. And I think we can play our part in that, but from their point of view, they must also recognise the business needs to go through sometimes quite a complicated process of change, which might affect colleagues or employees in the business, but in the longer run, there is real reward for doing that.
Sounds like some really interesting stages ahead with investment solutions. Thank you for your time, Nick Morrill.
Thank you very much.